boring notion, but a more cyclical thing that would be better, I think. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, I'm going to talk about something very simple, a park. Okay? And I'm going to gradually let you actually think what is the problem there. So I'm not going to foreground that. I think that would keep us more perhaps interested in this. Okay, and we have this secret thing. This is this beautiful park, Super Clean. It's an urban project, a linear park located at the heart of a multi-ethnic neighborhood in Copenhagen, Denmark. To address social unrest that long plagued the neighborhood, the municipality of Copenhagen, along with the Danish private philanthropic associations, devised a large urban renewal project. The collective effort culminated in the design of a wonderfully successful public space, called a colossal achievement, as a scholar framed it. What is the design method here? You see there is almost no trees. The park is structured around a strikingly simple principle. At least on the surface, it is about a composition in which code 108 objects and 11 trees code populating a wedge-shaped space. You see these trees, signs, there are probably trees too. The site was a leftover space resulted from the removal of a tramway track that circumnavigated the inner city roughly for a century, from 1880s to 1972. The linear stretch of the land is divided into 3 color-coded zones, as you might can see, where each area is dedicated to different programmatic activities as distinct set of urban furniture. You see the red color there, and there is black and then green divided into 3. The primary architect, B.R.G. Ingalls, claimed that the team code would not need to design anything. All what they needed to do was to let people recommend cool stuff, as he said, from all over the world. The 3 colors, red, black, and green, permeated the entire landscape, covering not only floor areas, but also folded on walls and vertical surfaces, as if a giant paint bucket was poured over the city. The neighborhood, Norborough, houses the largest percentage of immigrants in Denmark. That is, inhabitants originating outside the country. In talking about the neighborhood, Barbara Steyer juxtaposes ugliness with liveliness, civic spirit, and resistance to authorities. Norborough, as city architect puts it, is an old backside of the city. The statistics shows that 27% of people there are either immigrants or, according to a report from 2010, descendants of first-generation immigrants. The design group had produced this map to show a colorful tapestry of 60 nationalities that inhabit the neighborhood. It patches together national flags from several countries. You see the US flag, Canada, England, Italy, Brazil, but who else? It affirms that the neighborhood is truly multinational. What it does not tell us, nonetheless, is that the proportions, or perhaps more importantly, it does not address the politically incorrect question. Who is the problem? If, in the first place, the park was commissioned to address social problems, what is the relationship of social malaise and different nationalities? If there is a relationship, what is the nature of it? Given the negligible ratio of African countries, the problem does not seem to be primarily racial as much as it can be cultural. The question is, nonetheless, what type of urban furniture can accommodate itself to a wide spectrum of public taste in a culturally diverse neighborhood? Further, what type of activities are inclusive enough to serve different communities in a multicultural settings? Rather than designing generic elements, the joint design team invited select members of different communities to propose specific objects. To get the community involved, there have been announcement everywhere, internet included, newspapers, posters, etc., hoping to maximize the participation. Again, Barbara Steiner refers to the idea of objects as agents of integration code. The objects should have been able to create relationship with different people and to establish in this way emotional connectivity. Now, to quickly just show you, this might be helpful to see what's going on. I will talk about how many awards they have won, but this is
almost 1 mile long, this urban park celebrates a truly global Danish neighborhood by featuring items from the 62 home countries of the local inhabitants, like exercise gear from Muscle Beach in LA and palm trees from China. The area also serves as a giant exhibition of urban best practice, with pathways for pedestrians and cyclists, outdoor recreation spaces, plus a market space and games areas. Within severe cost limitations, the team kept as much of the existing landscape as possible, using bold color and public art to promote social interaction and exude a high level of energy.
Okay, you see that happy kind of background music there, which is amazing. We'll think about that. Let's see how can I get to this. Good. Okay. Martin Raimund, the main landscape architect designer, even goes further. He calls this dramatic attention to the emotional capacities of design elements called the fetishism of objects. It would have been a remarkable achievement if the design could turn an otherwise ordinary objects into a fetish frame. Quote, I like to transfer shit into gold. Yeah. But how does this alchemy work? And what is the design technique that can put the idea into motion? In a curated fashion, designers help the members of the community to piece together their memories, familiar images, and original stories to construct a narrative. In the end, says Ramos Nelson, the park is a meshed up gigantic Tivoli with a big emphasis on telling stories, as we raised the question of telling stories, and narratives about each object. The constellation of objects, he continues, create stories. To avoid using the term subaltern subjects, it suffices to say that the design allows isolated voices to become storytellers. Very quick, this is also fascinating. They also won the AIA award, which is American Institute of Architecture award.
Hi, my name is Katie Gerfen. I'm the senior design editor for Architect Magazine. Joining me today is Kai Berkman from MIG to talk about Super Keelan, the project that won a 2013 AIA Honor Award. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Tell me a little bit about how the Super Keelan project came together. There are a lot of amazing objects that were brought together into this space of building.
Well, I think you have to sort of go back a little ways. The need for the project arose because of a lot of demonstrations. Similar to France, where you have demonstrations outside of Paris and London, there are areas where there's just sort of a feeling that there's not enough being done for certain constituencies. And so the city of Copenhagen decided in 2007 to invest in this sort of 1 kilometer piece that was sort of left when a local train line was decommissioned. And we partnered with Topotec, landscape architects out of Berlin, and also Superflex, artists in Copenhagen. And together, the thought and the thinking was that we don't tell people how to live with Danish design, but that they would actually educate us about the wonderful design elements in their countries.
Okay.
And so we source those pieces and bring them to Copenhagen.
So the point is that it's no longer about Denmark's national symbols that will fashion the landscape, but the design will incorporate a range of objects from many geographies. By democratizing the visual landscape, the park dismantles a privileged regime of representation that opts for a more horizontal and equitable expression of cultural symbols. But who were in the area? I mean, who is the one that you are trying to address? This is the image that they usually say. This is the area, this is the position of the park, and this is the neighborhood. I did another search, and this is what I found. You see what is that? The map of the actually Islamic centers in the area. So the problem is something a little bit different, right? You see, it's a concentration of something else in the area. Whether an inevitable accommodation or a more humanitarian act, the city have devised several programs to help its immigrant population. The municipality have conducted special study for the district. The report mapped up the dynamics between immigrants and ethnic Danes, focusing on the issues related to code, recognition, redistribution, multiculturalism, positive selectivism, and also particularism. All the problems that I think we have been talking so far in the conference. The study acknowledges that, contrary to the dominant political discourse, the Muslim community was not a singular entity and did not constitute a homogeneous group with fixed ethnic boundaries. The study pointed out the existence of a wide range of religious practices among Muslims. Further, it has been observed that race, ethnicity, and religion inevitably collapse into a kind of conglomerate. Individuals with certain cultural and ethnic background would be automatically perceived as Muslims, even though they may be atheists or followers of other religions. Race is translated, therefore, into a monolithic culture, and culture then is reduced to a single and singular religion. To imagine the narrative of the dominant ideology, one can think that of this, quote, "These non-white people have a radically different culture from that of ours, and that's because of their religion. That's why they cannot appropriate our Western liberal values." Only around 30% of Muslims, on the other hand, regard themselves as Danish, while approximately 10% believe that others see them, they wish others see them as Danes. Many Muslims believe that they want to be seen actually as Danes. And so this is an interesting question, that they don't actually want to keep this difference. Okay. Let me just quickly get to this problem of economy. Despite its revitalized economy, the raising unemployment rate on a national scale casts its shadow on the city. Furthermore, there exists a sharp income polarization with a widening gap between the rich and the poor. The same story is here, and the formation of trash proletariat, who remain outside the labor market for 4/5 of the year. Unfortunately, this poverty is aligned with certain ethnicities. The vocation of ethnic enclaves and parallel societies was an interesting question. Protests and riots are nothing new to the neighborhood. In May 1872, the labor movement marked its demand with thousands of workers protesting against the long working hours, and eventually the Battle of Commons became the hallmark of anti-establishment resistance in their area. In case of 2008 outbreak, on the other hand, which in many cases accounts as the worst riot in Denmark, the crash was not a right-wing outbreak against the immigrants, but an uprising by immigrants themselves. Ethnic minorities, particularly young Muslim men, who were frustrated by police brutality as well as the racial discrimination that at the center of this energy. So, anyways, there was a series of revolts, and then they eventually demolished this famous youth house, and you see that they kind of took it off as a tooth to be pulled out. But then one of the right-wing, the populist Danish People Party said that we give us back Norborough. She says this country will work on getting back Norborough. So the tolerance and liberalism can once again make its way north of Queen Lord's Bridge, so this side of it. The slogan was not this. Interesting enough, before 2008, this was their primary primary discourse. They say, let's tell people, even if they are Muslims or immigrants, today they say we have to take care of Danish people first, and this later. Okay, this is the gist of the point. You see the image. What is wrong with it, or what is interesting? The noun sign here is down here that combines in the style of a portmanteau word two distinct elements is demonstrative. The street lamp posts is a collage of a crescent and a tooth. The crescent has been a recognized sign within Islamic symbolism and has maintained its visual currency by being an indispensable part of many Muslim nation-states' flag. Turkey, for example. The striking point is that instead of a star, there is a tooth inside the crescent. Symbols, nonetheless, are not trivial cultural signs. At least for Clifford Geertz, religion is synonymous with the system of symbols. It is not only that symbols are object of reverence, they generate and sustain powerful quote, modes and motivations, and quote, that seems real to those who believe in them. Put simply, symbols bear power and they act upon subjects. This is why historically insulting symbols have not been taken lightly. More often than not, gestures of disrespect have been confronted with vindicative retaliation. How come that Muslim members of this neighborhood have come to terms with this innovation? Let me tell you what. This is a quote from one of the people that has produced a report of the crime. It says, quote, such a hubris take on a powerful religious and cultural symbol such as the crescent and the star is possible within the context of an Islamic country deconstructs stereotypes that people in Denmark might have had about Islamic culture, revealing possibilities for playing with cultural symbols, which also counters the conflicting possibilities in the previously mentioned cartoon controversy. The paragraph almost encapsulates my thesis. The design of the lamp is only pretext. The reference to the cartoon controversy is a clear indication that the seemingly humorous play is intended to desensitize Muslims, to dismantle the Geertzian moods and motivations that give symbols an aura of factuality. In this precise sense, the otherwise blasphemous signs functions as a vaccine, a low dose of trigger that does not amount to a real fever. Another report says that this has done in a respectful manner. Well, you might say this is basic parameters of social engineering, this type of desensitizing. Another report says this. It says, I look at this embracing certain levels of conflict as being a kind of vaccination, this part is decidedly conflictual, as that critic adds. Now, okay, but where this one's coming from? They took this one. Let me give you the example. The story is a fascinating one, and I will then get to my conclusion. They published a book, and it talks about that they were knocking on the neighborhood doors, and they wanted to bring these people out to participate, so they had translators. So the resident from Muscat came out, and he first refused, and started to talk in Arabic with him, and he brought a bunch of photos, and inside the photos was one of these images, the picture on the right, that didn't belong to him, but to his uncle, who turned out to pay for him to migrate to Denmark. He was from Qatar. Dr. Sina Dental Clinic in Doha paid for this guy in Oman to go to Denmark. So you see how it has been shifted. But if you think about this, the name is an Indian name, which makes things even more interesting. Okay. Now, another thing that was fascinating is this, of course, right? That the reason that this designer very astutely immediately grabbed that photo and pulled it out of that pile is interesting. They realized something And this is what he says, one of the designers, quote, "This project was all about integration. It was like 6 months after the riots, after the Muhammad cartoon crisis." He said the antagonism was conspicuously evident in the neighborhood, he continued, and people in Denmark were suffering a bit from ambiguity of being tolerant. Okay, so people were suffering from being tolerant. All right, so just and Judith Butler has talked about this. Judith Butler has said that, for example, in Denmark, if you are immigrant from Muslim countries, they put you in front of the screens and they show you pictures of gays, for example, kissing each other, so you tolerate that, and then you expand the level of toleration. And the idea of that bike racks as the sign, as kind of populating their visual landscape with the signs is one another technique, which is interesting. But I wanted to end with this, really. Who remembers this? Have anybody seen this film, Dogville, by any chance? Okay, let me quickly get into that. There's a quote from one report and we'll get there. And I think we are getting to 5 minutes. Okay, I have 5 minutes before getting to that cycle. But let me just quickly read this. The black market, this one that you saw, the black market, see the lines, with its black asphalt and white strips, is formally perhaps the most visually striking part of the park, of course. The parallel, because it doesn't like to look parking garage. The parallel, yet diverging, white strips are meant to curate movements of people on site, around, and toward objects. The zone of park is reminiscent of Danish avant-garde film drama Dogville, 2013, written and directed by Lars von Trier, which uses reminiscent stage-like set with that black and white thing. As this film was reference for the architects, the black market reads like a stage. Okay, so they kind of give this to this film as a reference, which, let me tell you what's the problem here. Dogville is a film about the range of faith trust. The misanthropic implications of the story have been regarded as, quote, austere allegory of failed Christian charity, end quote. The film is about a young, beautiful woman, Grace, Nicole Kidman, who, upon being chased by a mob, seeking refuge in a small town in Colorado. Persuaded by the town's moralists, the occupants agreed to accommodate her in exchange for her labor. The community becomes increasingly hostile when they realize that she has a wanted poster somewhere, and they start to exploit her, abuse her, rape her, etc. And then when the father finds him, he says, if people in this town didn't like me, the grace that has been given to them, then there is nothing I can do about it. And then she concedes her dad's vindictive desire to massacre the entire city. Okay. I don't get to, because it takes some time from us to get to the theological implications of Christian theological implication of this film about, grace and how grace should be received, and if you don't receive the grace, what will happen to you. But let me just end with this, this interesting thing. And I have an argument about, the problem of neighbor and how neighbor is constituted, but let me just finish with something simple. It says, an author, in his theological interpretation of film, argues that the story is about a city that fails to learn how to receive and how to accept. Grace makes her gift available to the city as a way of assimilating grace in the everyday life of Dogville. City failure is receiving the results in its annihilation. Let ask me again, why was the film a reference for the architects? Is it Grace a fugitive, a refugee, or an immigrant of sorts seeking refuge in Dogville, the very city that accommodates her, that is Copenhagen itself? Is there a connection between the riot in Copenhagen and the burning down of Dogville by the gang? Who can assume the symbolic role of Grace's dad? A father figure of sorts, a charismatic thing, but Islamic extremism, if not terrorism. So the references are quite interesting. And let me just end with a positive note after all of these suspicions. And how can I just skip this?
Can't leave. I'm trying to.
Okay, let me just end. The task of analysis is not to side with or against the design of the park. I'm not interested in evaluating its putative success or its potential failure. Rather, I'm trying to unconceal the contradictions inherent in the state-sponsored public projects. My relationship to Superkilen, therefore, is that of ambivalence. On the one hand, the park diffuses social tension by externalizing them, that is, by transferring them into a space and objects. On the other, the employed design method was highly suspicious, as the participants were engaged in a process that can be equated to social engineering. The park has been said to be a catalyst for integration, and at the same time, an apparatus of reconstruction of identities. To reiterate, the problem is not so much with what the project achieves, but how does it achieve it. Superkilen is transforming identities, yet it's not merely the space that is constituted through radical juxtapositions, spontaneous encounters, and promiscuous exchanges, nor are they only symbols that are reconfigured and translated into new signs. More importantly, there are equivalent processes on the subjective level. And in decoding architectural messages, we need to be vigilant, not only looking for what is said, but find what has remained unsaid. Architecture is not only revealing social antagonisms, it more often conceals them. The question of representation, creativity, and design becomes complicated when it comes to identities. Blasphemy, Assad argues, quote, may simply be violent, masquerading as creative rupture. I'm skeptical of all too eager fetishization of the metaphor giving voice. Superkilen, the park is about giving voice to the subaltern subject, one might say. But following a Deleuzian logic, one might also assert that riots were already a voice, a percussive one, crying against the dominant orders. Walter Benjamin, in the conclusion of the famous essay, work of art in the Age of Mechanical Production, says fascism sees its salvation in giving these masses not their right, but instead the chance to express themselves. Just the last sentence, if not solution, architecture can provide as a reassuring image. It drapes an aesthetic veneer over social antagonism. And perhaps this is the point of architecture, to cover up, to dissimulate, to represent. I should therefore drop my concern about the process and the manipulation of these communities in their struggle for recognition, and perhaps join others in celebrating the project for what it achieves, being, quote, an extremely popular park. Thank you.